Welcome back to Tax Crunch. My name is Christopher Volas, and today I'd like to talk about making the election to be taxed as an S corporation. So you're a new business or you just got incorporated, you're going to have 2 months and 15 days from that incorporation date to file this election and make it effective for that first year, which is what you're going to want. Now, this topic is very confusing for many people. The S election status just changes the way the company is taxed. It does not change the entity structure of the company. Therefore, if you're an LLC, you can make this election and still remain an LLC with all the same rights and protections. So who qualifies for this election? Has to be a domestic corporation or LLC. The shareholders have to be U.S. resident individuals. It can't be other LLCs, partnerships, or corporations. Has to be 100 or fewer shareholders, and there could only be one class of stock. So you can't have preferred and common stock. The voting rights don't have to be exactly the same, but the class of stock does, which affects the distribution and liquidation rights of all the shareholders. So if you meet all the criteria, you will be eligible. Most small businesses are going to be eligible for the S election status. So what would be the reason to file this election? Real quick summary, if you are a corporation already, you've probably heard the term double taxation. A regular C corporation pays income tax at the corporate level on profits, and then when those profits are distributed via dividends, the individual pays income tax again on it. So that's the double taxation. So the IRS allows small businesses to bypass this and have all of the profits flow through to the personal return of the shareholders. So you only pay taxes one time. Now, LLCs already have that pass-through treatment. The only difference being all the profits of an LLC are generally subject to self-employment tax, whereas the profits of an S corporation are not. So S corporations can control their self-employment taxes, LLCs cannot. So that is usually the reason that people file for the S election status. As I had mentioned before, there is no additional entity protection. It's the same structure. This is just for tax purposes. So let's jump onto the form real quick and see how this form gets filled out. Okay, so here we're looking at the 2553 form, the election by a small business corporation. You can find this form on the irs.gov website. Here in the address bar, you'll see exactly where you can pull that form. I'm just going to do a quick run through. If everything is good, you just incorporated, you're filing on time within that 2 month and 15 day deadline period I discussed. The form itself is pretty basic. Here you're going to see in part 1, you're putting the business name, the business address, the federal ID number of the business, the date you were incorporated right from the articles, and the state of incorporation. Part E is going to be, when do you want this to be effective? So if you just incorporated, you're going to put the incorporation date. If you incorporate on July 1st, you're going to want to put July 1st. That first tax return that you file is going to cover July 1st through December 31st. If for some reason you've already been in business and you just want to start as an S election in the future, you would put January 1st of that following year, and that would be a clean break. This is all under the assumption that you're a calendar year basis and you're filing with a December 31st year end. And that flows through the next section, section F. If you are calendar year, you're just going to check that box. If for some reason you file with a year end other than December 31st, check this box, put the month and day in, and then subsequently you're going to fill out part 2 of the form here. If you are a calendar year basis, you don't have to fill out part 2, you just continue going here. Next section that's going to matter is H. Just put the name, officer, title, telephone number. If you're filing on time, you can skip I, and then you just sign it, title it, date it. Part 1, page 2 is where all the shareholders basically sign. If it's just you, it's just going to be this one line here. Otherwise, you're going to get the name and address of each shareholder. You're going to have them sign, date, the number of shares they own, or the percentage ownership. Obviously, make it tally up to 100%. The dates acquired, typically the articles of incorporation date, the Social Security number for each shareholder, and the shareholder's tax year end. Again, typically going to be December 31st. That's how most of us file. So if everything is on time and it's a calendar year basis, you stop right there. And then you mail the form in or fax it, and that's all you do. As I mentioned before, if you're not a calendar year basis, you just fill out Part 2, and Part 3 is only for trusts that are going to own S Corp shares, qualified subchapter S Trust, QSST. We don't have to worry about that here. So basically, most people are going to leave Part 2 and Part 3 empty and just file here.
Yes?
Yes?
I don't get it.
So if you're filing late, you are going to fill out the form the same way as I had just mentioned, with the exception of in this section I, you're going to list one of the reasons that the IRS accepts, and here on the instructions are a list of the different reasons, very basic. For example, you can just say we intended to be classified as an S corporation, we were unaware of the date, and we are filing it subsequently. So many people have filed late that they have an IRS revenue procedure just for this. So what you're going to do is on the form itself, up at the top of the first page, you are going to write filed pursuant to IRS Rev Proc 2013-30. And then fill in the section I, and everything else stays the same. And then you'll wait for the IRS response to see if they accept it or not. Most likely they will. My suggestion is do not file a tax return until you get the acceptance letter, because it can be quite a mess if you file the return assuming you're an S Corp and then you get rejected. So that's the form itself.
Yes.
I still don't get it.
So that's just a quick overview on the application process for the S election. It's really just scratching the surface on the topic of S corporations, S corps versus LLCs. I'll save that topic for a different day. If you do have any questions on it, if you're a client of mine already or looking to be, if you're starting a business, confused about the process, feel free to contact me and I'd be glad to help you out. So thanks again for tuning in, and stay tuned for more from TaxCrunch.